I ever feel like some people, they just get math.
Yeah.
Like there's some secret code that they're in on.
Yeah.
And we're all missing out.
Right.
Well, we're diving into some really fascinating research on this deep dive.
Yeah.
From Soo-hyun and Sashank Varma at Georgia Tech.
Okay.
And it might explain this phenomenon,
Okay.
It's all about those aha moments in math, the ones where the solution just kind of clicks into place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you might be surprised to hear that it might all come down to something called arithmetic principles.
And what's really interesting about this is we often focus so much on like the building blocks of math, right?
Yeah.
Early on, like number sense.
Yeah.
How quickly you can compare numbers, and then arithmetic fluency, how easily you can just like rattle off those multiplication facts.
Like times tables, all that stuff.
But what this research suggests is that there might be something much deeper at play.
Okay.
Especially when we think about like those same kids growing up and going into more challenging math courses.
So it's almost like saying, okay, you know the alphabet.
Right.
Versus like you understand grammar and syntax.
Yes.
You might be able to spell out words.
Yeah.
But can you construct a truly like elegant, beautiful sentence?
That is a fantastic analogy because what we're talking about are those fundamental rules, those underlying principles that govern how arithmetic actually works.
Right.
We're talking about things like inverse operations.
Okay.
So the idea that addition and subtraction are opposites.
Okay.
Or multiplication and division, they undo each other.
Right, right.
Or the associative property, which basically says it doesn't matter how you group numbers when you're adding or multiplying, you'll still get to the same answer.
Okay, so hold on a second.
Yeah.
These sound like pretty basic concepts.
Right.
I mean, these are things we learned in like, what, elementary school.
Exactly.
But how are these suddenly the key to like unlocking higher level math for college students?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
That's what I'm and Varma really wanted to investigate. They wanted to see if there was a connection between understanding these very basic fundamental principles and excelling in college-level math. So they gave students a bunch of different tasks, and one of the most telling ones involved verifying these complex arithmetic sentences.
Okay.
Just like strings of numbers and operations.
Yeah, yeah. Give me an example. What are we talking about here?
Okay. So imagine something like 18 multiplied by 7 divided by 7.
Okay.
Now, most people would probably just go step by step.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd multiply 18 by 7 and then divide whatever I get by 7.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's where those arithmetic principles really come in.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. Because if you understand that dividing by a number is the inverse of multiplying by that same number.
Exactly.
You can just kind of like skip that whole part.
You see a shortcut immediately.
Yeah.
You see that 7 divided by 7 essentially cancels itself out. It's just 1. And you're left with 18 times 1, which of course is just 18. And that's that aha moment, that ability to see those shortcuts.
Yeah.
That's the power of understanding those arithmetic principles.
Okay, so it's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Right.
And what they found was that students who used these principles weren't just faster at solving the problems, they were also more accurate.
Interesting.
It's like they had this internal compass that was guiding them towards the most elegant solution. Yeah. And remember how we were talking about those other essential math skills?
Yeah.
Like number sense and arithmetic fluency?
Right.
Well, here's the really interesting thing.
Okay.
Even when Emin and Varma, they controlled for those factors.
Yeah.
Like they looked at students with similar levels of those basic abilities.
Right.
It was still the understanding of the arithmetic principles that really set the high achievers apart.
So it's almost like those principles are like a hidden layer of understanding.
Yeah.
That can make a huge difference, even if you've got like the basics down pat.
Exactly.
But did the research show that all of the principles were like equally easy to grasp?
That's a great question, and the short answer is no.
Okay.
So while all of the principles did lead to better performance, the inverse principle seemed to be the easiest one for students to kind of pick up and use.
That makes sense to me because it's almost like a light switch.
Yeah.
It's like you're back to where you started.
Exactly.
It's very clear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then when it came to things like the associative property, remembering that you can group the numbers differently when you're adding or multiplying, it got a bit trickier for some students, especially when you start throwing in the commutative property on top of that.
Right.
So having to rearrange the numbers as well.
Right, right.
So it seems like the order in which these principles are learned and how deeply they're understood,
Yeah.
could make a real difference.
It's like anything else, right? You need a really strong foundation before you can build these really elaborate structures.
Precisely.
But I feel like this is about way more than just like acing a math test.
Absolutely.
Right.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
This research has implications way beyond the classroom.
Okay.
What's so fascinating about this is that it really speaks to something very fundamental about how we approach problems in all areas of life.
Okay, now you've really piqued my interest. Tell me more about that.
Okay, so think about it.
Yeah.
Our world is just awash in complexity, right?
Right.
We are constantly bombarded with information.
Sure.
We're faced with decisions big and small.
Right.
But what if, beneath all of that complexity, there are these fundamental principles at play? These patterns that we see repeating themselves across different contexts.
I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
It's almost like we need to train our brains to be on the lookout for those patterns.
Exactly.
Those underlying principles that can help us cut through the noise.
Yeah, precisely.
And get to like a solution faster.
It's about being able to see those elegant shortcuts, those connections that can help simplify even the most daunting challenges. And just like those arithmetic principles can help us solve complex equations, maybe there are similar principles that can help us unravel the mysteries of human behavior or make better decisions in our personal and professional lives.
I'm starting to see the world in a whole new light. This is great.
Yeah.
But if these principles are so powerful, how do we actually measure that understanding?
Yeah.
So Emma Varma had a very specific way of doing that in their study, right?
Absolutely. And it goes back to those complex arithmetic sentences that we were talking about before.
Right.
Remember how I said they weren't just random strings of numbers and operations?
Right.
They were very carefully designed to test whether students would spot the opportunities to use those arithmetic principles as shortcuts.
So they weren't just looking for the right answer. It was really about like the how and the why behind the students' methods.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, they were looking for those light bulb moments, those flashes of insight that happen when you truly grasp, like, the underlying structure of a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And by analyzing not just, whether the answers were correct, but also, like, how quickly students solve the problems.
Right.
Even, like, their own descriptions of their thought processes, that's how they were able to isolate the impact of understanding those principles.
That's really cool. So, okay.
Yeah.
This brings us to, I think, like, the big question here.
Right.
Which is, what does this all mean for our listeners?
Right.
The people out there who want to tap into that inner mathematician.
Yes.
Even if maybe numbers haven't always been their strong suit.
Yeah. For so long we've emphasized rote learning and memorization in math education.
Right.
And while those things definitely have their place, I think this research is a really powerful reminder that true mastery comes from understanding the why behind the what.
It's like the difference between like knowing the steps to a dance.
Yes.
And truly like feeling the rhythm and like letting the music guide your movement.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
Right.
It's about going beyond just plugging in numbers and following formulas.
Right.
It's about cultivating that ability to look at a problem and see the underlying structure.
Yeah.
The elegant principles that can guide you to a solution.
Okay, so then how do we actually do that?
Well, I think it starts with curiosity.
Okay.
Don't just accept things at face value.
Right.
Ask why.
Well,
why do things work the way they do?
Right.
Look for those hidden connections, those recurring patterns in everything you encounter. Right. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Play with different approaches to challenges. You might be amazed by the really elegant solutions that you uncover.
So it's almost like we have to bring that sense of playfulness and wonder back into learning.
Absolutely, because that's where those true breakthroughs happen.
Yeah.
Who knows, that seemingly insignificant pattern that you notice today might unlock some major insight tomorrow.
That's a great point. This has been a really thought-provoking deep dive.
It has.
It's given us a whole new way to look at not just math, but learning in general.
Yeah.
And really the world around us. So
absolutely.
The next time that you're facing a challenge out there, remember those hidden principles, those elegant shortcuts that are just waiting to be discovered.
Keep your eyes peeled.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep on deep diving.